The CEO of Apple thinks that paying corporate taxes is unfair. Talking to the Washington Post, Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, said that paying 40% on its income tax held overseas, on its assets held overseas, it's just too much. According to the Washington Post interview, he said, quote, "We've set it 40%. We're not going to bring it back until there's a fair rate. There's no debate about it. Is that legal to do or not legal to do? It is legal to do. It is the current tax law. It's not a matter of being patriotic or not patriotic. It doesn't go that the more you pay, the more patriotic you are." A little bit of an issue with that. I think that contributing to the common good of the country is kind of patriotic. Now, there are issues where you can pay too much. That's why we have a progressive tax system. That's why the richer you are, the more you contribute to society, because apparently the more that you've gotten out of that society. But anyway, let's go to the numbers. See, Apple is currently holding $181 billion overseas. Now, that's largely thanks to low-tax countries like Ireland. Now, Ireland is a country of 4.6 million people. Lovely place, I'm sure. However, with only 4.6 million people there, it seems to have earned over 1/3 of all of Apple's worldwide revenue. A third of $181 billion for such a small population. That seems a little amiss. It seems like there's something kind of wrong with that figure. Well, it turns out it is. You see, because of current tax law, they can funnel their earnings, their offshore earnings, into these low-tax countries and protect it from U.S. taxation. And Tim Cook thinks that's okay. Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to hoard my money. I'm going to keep it away from America, money that I actually owe on my profits, to the American government, to the American people. I'm going to keep it over in Ireland because I'm a stingy fuck. But Jeff, you say you're being kind of unfair, right? Well, what's unfair about paying taxes? What's unfair about you paying taxes when Apple gets away with not paying taxes because they think that's unfair? See, what they're doing is that they're holding us for ransom. Nobody likes to pay taxes, obviously. But the problem is that when Apple doesn't pay their fair share, you have to step up to make up the difference. That's what's not fair. And by doing what they're doing, they're essentially holding us for ransom, saying that if you don't lower our corporate taxes, then I'm just going to keep my money elsewhere, despite using American resources like roads and bridges, etc., and things that we have publicly invested in, like our power grid, like our internet grid, all that stuff. Well, we're not going to contribute back to that, even though we're going to use all that stuff to make more profit in America. To me, that sounds like bullshit. Now, Cook wants us to know that, like, he's not a bad guy. No, he's not a bad CEO. It's not that he cares only about money. No, not at all. Look, to be fair to Apple, they have created absolutely wonderful things. The iPhone, the iPad, the iPod, none of which I actually have. I tend to stay away from Apple products. And of course, they created the famous Macintosh computer. If you're into that whole thing, I guess that's good. I'm not going to judge if you have a Mac. But and because of selling those things being incredibly well made and very popular, well, that made the company incredibly wealthy. Great. That's the American dream. I've got no problem with making money. I've got no problem with wealth. What I have a problem with is not paying your fair share when you're able to afford to. Okay? Now, here's the thing. Even if Apple paid their fair share of taxes, they would still be incredibly wealthy and profitable. We're not asking for 100% of what you earn. No. We're not confiscating all your wealth like some people would allege. No, what we're doing is that we're taking a part of that and distributing it around to help take care of other people and to educate the next group of entrepreneurs. I mean, think of a young person who could be the next Steve Jobs, but right now is poor. He's living in poverty, or he or she. That money could get this person an education and a chance to do great things, to invent the next Apple, okay, to create hundreds of thousands of jobs. You see, America is about opportunity, and taxes and redistribution is about paying it forward so that everyone has a chance to do great things. That kid could get an education and do great things. and then he pays it forward to the next generation. That's what it's supposed to be. That's what taxes are for. Now, taxes are also for rebuilding our infrastructure, which, of course, helps everybody, including job creators, right? It helps everybody do better. Now, here's Tim Cook on that. He said, I'm optimistic that in 2017, there will be some sort of corporate tax reform. Oh, no kidding. He said the U.S. needs to invest more in infrastructure. That I agree with. So what would be great is if they take the tax proceeds of a corporate tax reform and invest it in infrastructure and roads and bridges and airports. Okay, well, all of that sounds really great. But I'm in favor of taking tax money and investing it in infrastructure, especially from corporations. That sounds like a great idea. But here's the thing. He says, well, we need corporate tax reform first. Now, corporate tax reform, translated into English, means cut my taxes and let me repatriate the money I have offshore in what's called a tax holiday. Now, the problem is that we've done that before. In fact, all the way back in 2004, we gave corporations a chance to repatriate their money at a tax rate of about 5%. Now, the New York Times, back in 2011, wrote that the legislation specified that the funds should be earmarked for activities like hiring workers or conducting research, and prohibited using the money for executive compensation or buying back stock. Okay, so look, there were some clear rules, and as long as you played by those rules, you could repatriate your money at a 5% tax rate. Now, that's a lot lower than what they're supposed to pay, which is about 39% or 35%, I think, back in that time. So what happened? Well, it turns out that whole repatriation thing, abysmal failure. Failed. What happened? According to a report from the Democratic staff of the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, the 15 companies that benefited most from the 2004 tax break for the return of their overseas profit ended up cutting more than 20,000 net jobs and decreased the pace of research spending. Well, wait a minute. They brought in all that money and they cut jobs. Now, Senator Carl Levin, who was a senator from Michigan, said, quote, there is no evidence that the previous repatriation tax giveaway put Americans to work, and substantial evidence that it instead grew executive paychecks, propped up stock prices, and drew more money and jobs offshore. So it had the complete opposite effect. As I said, wasn't this supposed to create jobs? No, what it did is that it had the effect of incentivizing companies to stash more money overseas, more of their profits, so that they can wait for the next holiday and bring all that back bring back all that money at a hugely lower tax break. Okay? Hugely lower tax rate. So, the effect of that. Well, now U.S. corporations have stashed $2.1 trillion in profits overseas. Now, the effect of that is it's not going to infrastructure, it's not going on roads and bridges, and it's not going to our schools. In fact, our roads and bridges are incredibly subpar, they're falling apart, and of course our schools, they're in desperate need of repairs and supplies. According to a recent report from the Natural Resources Defense Council, millions of people are also drinking lead-contaminated water from our terrible infrastructure. In fact, this report shows that 5,363 water systems, which provide water to more than 18 million people, breached the federal lead and copper rule last year. These violations include the failure to properly test water for lead or inadequate treatment of water to prevent lead from leaching from old pipes into the drinking supply. Oh, but all these people, 18 million people, could be drinking lead-contaminated water? That's okay. As long as Tim Cook has his tax cut, that'll be okay. We can ignore that. Yeah, what's worst is, of course, that Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton has hinted that she will push for another repatriation holiday in her first 100 days in office. Now, that's not saying that Donald Trump is any better. Donald Trump and the Republicans want to push for the same thing. Moreover, in the interview, Cook notes that he's gotten advice on how to handle this issue from both Goldman Sachs and from both Goldman Sachs CEO Lloyd Blankfein as well as Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton saying, hey, here's how to handle your tax repatriation so that you end up getting your giant tax cut for bringing in all those profits overseas. I thought they were progressives. No, of course they're not. And look, this is how they screw you, man. This is an example of the government and corporations getting together to decrease taxes for themselves and increase it on you. Hey everybody, if you like this video, then please like this video and share. And if you want to see more like this, then please hit that subscribe button below.